Hello, my beautiful PhD friends. So today we're going to talk about the 4 signs that you should quit your PhD. If you're new to this channel, please remember to subscribe and hit that bell notification because I'm going to share with you everything I've learned about doing a PhD and academia, and I would love to share that with you. Okay, let's get on and look at these 4 signs that you should quit your PhD. Okay, here is my disclaimer. Now, this decision should not be taken lightly. Just like going into a PhD, you should not take leaving a PhD as a decision to be made during emotional times, during times where you're feeling really sad about the direction, this is a big decision. Just like you probably spent a fair amount of time thinking about doing a PhD, this is a decision that you come back to over the course of a couple weeks, couple months, because it is a big decision and I would hate for it to be something that you regret. Okay, so I just want to let you know that everyone feels like quitting at some point. There is no shame in saying this is really tough. This is something that is stretching me to my limits academically, and also just kind of like my persistence and motivation has been stretched thin. And that's absolutely fine. And look, quitting doesn't have to be the end point. There are plenty of opportunities to take breaks. You can downgrade to a master's, and you can take a sabbatical. That's not ideal. And a lot of people that leave a PhD, I think, don't really want to come back. But yes, there's lots of other options other than quitting outright in a fit of rage or in sadness. So yes, and don't make this decision without consulting with someone you trust, with people that you value their opinion, and talk it out over a couple of months at least. When you first feel like quitting, you can be like, well, what is it about this? What emotions am I feeling? How am I framing this? Is that real? Because we have a tendency to catastrophize. Is what I'm feeling real? Do the facts back me up? Do people agree that this is a good step for me? And are there other options? Those are the things that you should explore before quitting outright. But I think these are the 4 things that could signify that, yes, it is the end of your PhD. And one thing I want to say is that there is no shame in leaving a PhD. You don't have to worry about what people think. First of all, that doesn't matter anyway. But also, you are not silly or stupid, right? The most important thing, and one of the things I always say to people when they talk about having a PhD and how clever I must be and all that sort of stuff, which I love, but it's not necessarily true, is that a PhD does not mean you are not capable academically. To get to the point where you can be accepted for a PhD, you have to be clever. There's no doubt about it. You have to have worked hard, right? The fact you're there has already meant you've crossed the threshold for being a clever person who's capable of doing a PhD. I think the thing that separates the people that finish from the people that want to quit and leave early is that it just doesn't fit their life. It doesn't fit what they want to do. It doesn't sort of motivate them. It doesn't fill them with joy, or it doesn't interest them in any way. And it's really like the persistence aspect. I really feel like a PhD is like 90% work and just doing it and getting through the process, and about 10% smarts. Like everyone that could do a PhD has already got to that first year. So yes, there is no shame. It's not that you're stupid. It's not that anything. It's just not the right fit for you. And there's no shame in saying that. And it was something that I had to go through a lot when I left academia, is like, oh, am I not capable of this? No, I'm capable of it. I just don't want to do it. And that's absolutely fine. And it can take a while to feel like, oh, I haven't failed. Anyway, that's probably another topic for another video. Let's talk about the 4 reasons why you should consider quitting your PhD. Okay, so the first one I've kind of already covered, and I think the decision point here is at the end of the first year. Now, my first PhD supervisor said to me that you should give everything about 6 months. So don't go making a decision in the first 6 months of your PhD. You know, it's going to be challenging, it's going to be tough, it's going to be different. And it's the different aspect that makes it hard. You know, this is the first time probably that you've had to really consider a long-term project. It's the first time that you've probably had to present your data to your supervisors in a certain way. It's the first time that you've had to really undertake independent research for, you know, or just on your own, maybe. So yeah, so I believe the first decision point is at the end of the first year. And at that point, you've probably had everything that you need to make a decision about whether or not a PhD is for you. You've done some research, some things have failed, you've had your arguments and disagreements with your supervisor. All of these things are part of the PhD process. Maybe you've been rejected a couple of times. You've seen what an academic peer review process is like. You probably haven't submitted a paper, or almost certainly you haven't submitted a paper, but you've probably seen people talk about them. You understand the process. And it's at the end of this first year where I think a simple act of going, this is not for me, is absolutely fine, because you haven't invested too much time, but you've had enough information to have an informed decision about leaving. Now, that comes with a whole range of like feelings and like guilt, and people were excited about you doing your PhD and now you're quitting, and there's all these things. But yes, the end of your first year is where I feel like you've got enough experience to say, I am leaving, this is not for me. I want to go into the real world and try something else. And that is absolutely fine. So that's the first reason. Get to the end of your first year and just go, oh, this is not right for me. This is a bit, I don't know, I find it a bit boring. I don't like it. It doesn't motivate me. And then, of course, before you leave, make sure you speak through all of those opinions and options with a career mentor, with your supervisor, and with the dean of the school, if that's something you feel comfortable doing. And it may just be that, yeah, if you're honest with yourself, I don't want to do it. I know what it's like. No thanks. Okay, the second reason that you should consider leaving your PhD is if your mental health or health in general is being severely affected. Now, I have seen a lot of depressed PhD students, and it's not that they're depressed all the time, but, you know, when things aren't working, things always seem to come in threes. You know, a paper gets rejected, your grant gets rejected, and your results are baloney. Like, those are just those kind of collections of bad things just seem to happen. It is quite a roller coaster of emotion at a PhD, but it could be that you have experienced a downtime for many months to the point where you have lost interest in your normal fun activities. You are constantly tired. You kind of disconnect with the world. You're very quiet. You know, like, those are the signs of depression. And when an emotional journey flips over into becoming a series of depressive episodes, then you should consider whether or not this is worth it. Like, is a PhD worth your health and your mental health? And my argument to that always is no, it's absolutely not. There are a couple of options. You can postpone your PhD. You can downgrade your PhD to a master's. There are a lot of options for you, and it doesn't mean that you have to like leave. It's fine to go on a sabbatical. You know, it's fine to say, you know what, I just need to take 6 months where I don't think about this. And I've seen people do it, and they come back refreshed and with better coping skills, with more skills to cope with the ups and downs of academia. So yes, that's the second reason, is a PhD is not worth your health or your mental health. Okay, the third reason that I think a PhD should be quit is if your supervisor and student relationship has completely broken down. The PhD student and supervisor relationship is the most important relationship in the whole PhD lifetime. Like, this person or these group of people are there to support you, they're there to protect you, they're there to motivate you. And if they're none of that and they're just causing you pain, or they've just disconnected completely, it's time to, first of all, divorce them. Like, get rid of this person. During my PhD, I changed my primary supervisor because of the issues that I had with my first primary supervisor, and that is completely normal and okay. So before you quit, you can ask for a divorce and to swap to a different supervisor. And this is the strange thing, you know, like, a supervisor when they're lecturing is a completely different person as to when they are doing research, because when they're teaching and lecturing, their job, their metric is to deliver content. Whereas during a PhD, there's money, there's power, there's papers, there's projects, there's grants, there's egos. It brings out the worst in people, like I've said in my other videos. So if your PhD and student supervisor relationship has completely broken down, it's time to consider whether or not a new relationship will bring you back on board, or you could quit and start again on another project. I've seen that happen as well. And that's absolutely fine. You know, human relationships are turbulent, they're weird, and having a person who can dictate essentially how you feel every day and they're making you feel like shit, that's no good. So it's time to quit your project and find a new one if your student and PhD supervisor relationship has completely broken down and is toxic. Okay, and fourth, and maybe the most important but hardest to identify, is if the project has no legs anymore. And what I mean by that is, when a PhD student does a PhD, quite often they are exploring the ideas of their supervisor and not their own ideas. At least that was my experience and the experience of the people around me. A supervisor will put in a project application and be like, okay, yeah, I'm going to get a PhD student to test out these ideas. And it may be they were just wrong, right? It may be the scope was too big, the project length was completely unreasonable. You know, it's a balance of how long you've got to do it, what you can achieve, and the resources that you have to do that. And any one of those three things can be completely out of whack. And it just means that the project, no matter if you had more resources, wouldn't matter because it would take years. You know, those three things are the perfect overlap of the Venn diagram. And it can be very easy that a PhD supervisor wants a PhD student to work on a project that would not work. Now, in Australia, and I think the UK and New Zealand, we have what's called a confirmation year, which is your first year where you get an opportunity to try out all the things, and you're essentially testing that project idea. Like, is it achievable? Are there things that work? Can I see myself getting to the end goal or getting publishable results within 3 years? And then you go, okay, this is good. We're going to continue with the next 2 years. But yeah, in a lot of places, that is not the case. You don't have the confirmation year. And about 2 years in, it's, you can't rescue a PhD in a year. But at the same time, the other side of that is, sometimes you do just need to persist through problems, like you come up against an issue and you're like, this would never work, and you just try things and it does work. So it can be very complicated to work out if a project is achievable or if it's just very hard. But as a PhD student, you shouldn't be expected to continue with something that would just never work. And you'll kind of get the idea of that in that first year. So going back to my first point, that first year decision point is the point where you should say, is this for me? Is my project working? Do I like my supervisor? Is my mental health and my health cool? And that's kind of all wrapped up into a nice package for you to be like, yes, I'm plowing ahead. Or, you know what? one of those is not right or good enough for me at the moment, I'm going to pull out. But I've had a great experience. I've learned a lot about myself and the process of doing a PhD. And yeah, that's when you could probably just quit. And like I said, there is no shame in it at all. Leaving academia for me was so refreshing. I've done so many awesome things. I've created my own company. I've won hundreds of thousands of dollars of prize money to invest in my company, which, you know, COVID has done a dirty on, but whatever. There are so many options and exciting opportunities beyond academia, and it's not the end of a story, it's just the beginning of a new one. So there we have it. Those are the reasons why I think you should consider quitting a PhD. Don't take the decision lightly and talk it through for a couple of months before you kind of really settle in on the fact that it's for you. If you like this video, please remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe, because I'm going to talk about all of these PhD and academia tips for as long as I possibly can. I shall see you in the next video.